Alright lads, it's a Meta Goblin here, and welcome to a critical analysis of why Unholy spec is like fucking a tranny until you die. The very simple and straightforward answer is Unholy does not have enough pressure in a PvP environment to kill things, to actually push rating in arena and actually succeed in defeating an enemy team. The very simple reason for this is, well, what we need to do is we need to explain how how damage normally works in PvP. Now, classes will either have a big burst rotation. For instance, warrior, mage, rogue. They're very bursty kind of classes. Like, you know, they charge a target. They do all the damage in about 5 seconds, they do a shitload of pressure, knock off a load of health, and then you have a bit of downtime before the burst comes back up, and they time it together with the arena their partners or their burst, and they keep on doing that. The other kind of way a PvP class has is basically a rotation that revolves around keeping a lot of damage up, a lot of sustained damage. For instance, like a Warlock, keeping the dots up, keeping those dots doing a lot of damage with, I think it's called Drain Soul. And then they have a little bit of burst to go alongside with their dots, which normally has a very low uptime. You know, Haunt, for instance, for a Warlock, it takes a while for you to build soul shards, enough soul shards up for the stacks. You know, it has a low downtime, but the burst is decent enough to score some kills. Back in the day when Unholy was a perfectly normal and sane class, we had this thing called Necrotic Strike, which was basically the equivalent of that. What we did as Unholy DK is we kept our sustained damage up with the blood boils, with the dots, with the pet, with the gargoyle and all that lovely stuff. And then we bursted out our necrotics, which was our burst pressure, and it was a really good burst pressure, and you know, we didn't have it up a lot of the time, probably every, I don't know, like 10 to 20 seconds. It wasn't up all the time and going batshit crazy like a warrior's burst, for instance. But that was enough. I mean, it was enough to have the burst happening now and again with our sustained damage to score the kills. And the thing is, right now, we don't have Necrotic Strike, and we don't have a substitute burst kind of thing. That little bit of burst which scores you the kills that every other class in the game has. Unholy just doesn't have it. What we have is sustained damage. The sustained damage is insane. It's really good for raiding. Obviously, when you're on a target 24/7, where the uptime is perfect, Unholy is a really good spec, and that's simply because basically you're doing something over time. You are doing damage over time in Unholy spec in raiding. I mean, warriors, you know, you're charging, you do your damage for about 5 seconds, you have about 5 seconds downtime. I mean, I don't play warrior, I just know that's like a rough estimate. And other classes normally function like that, like, you know, they have a bit of burst, and then they wait a bit, and then the burst comes back and they do it, and that's rinse and repeat. Now, Unholy, in raiding, it just does shitloads of great damage constantly, like, forever. Like, there isn't any downtime. I mean, there's a bit of an increase in damage now and again, obviously, when you pop your cooldown, such as Gargoyle, but 24/7, you are just doing loads of damage. The sustained damage is really nice, and you know, I mean, every global you're doing damage, like all the time you do constant damage. Now that isn't extremely helpful in a PvP environment, because there's this thing called, I don't think the actual designers of a game actually know that stuff like this exists. Perhaps we need to remind them on the forums, but there's such thing as crowd control. Okay, and there's such thing as other players, and there's such thing as range DPS, and players, guess what? Players can actually move. Oh my god, it's so hard to fucking comprehend, isn't it? I mean, you've been killing raid bosses all your life. Raid bosses don't move. Raid bosses move where you want them to move, okay? But players actually fucking move, and you have to follow them. And you have to kind of work out ways to catch up to them with certain things like slows and CC, your own CC. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, fucking hell. Who has ever heard of such a commodity? Well, basically, let's stop joking around. Because of that, our damage is virtually cut in half. Okay, we cannot stay on a target 24/7. If we could, if Unholy spec was a fucking ranged class, then it would probably be alright, but it's not. It's a melee class with probably the worst mobility in the game, which wasn't obviously a bad thing, because, you know, when you were in melee range, you could burst out your necrotics and do a decent amount of damage in a short space of time, and when you weren't on your target, you could fill in with your death cores, which is a ranged ability, Blood Boil ranged ability, Ice Touch ranged ability, and that was just fine. The fucking Unholy spec was just perfect in MoP. It was just fucking beautiful to play, so fun. But now, because we don't have the opportunity to constantly be on our target, we cannot get our damage out. We cannot simply get our pressure out. It just isn't there, unless we're on our target 24/7, and that is simply how the state of DK at the moment. Obviously, you didn't use Necrotic Strike in PvP, sorry, you didn't use it in PvE, and you'd only used it in PvP because it absorbed healing. That was perfect. I mean, Unholy could still be viable in raiding because you could, stay in your target, do the whole constant uptime on your damage thing. You could do that, and it was fine. I mean, Unholy was fine. And then the PvP is they could burst out with necrotics, because obviously they couldn't get on their target all the time. So the sustained damage was less, but you had that burst damage, that burst pressure to make up for the lack of uptime that you had on your target, and that was fine. And then they decided to remove it. I still don't understand why you would remove Necrotic Strike. I mean, either you were going to increase the damage and make up for it, which you haven't. So that was what I originally thought. When I originally heard that Necrotic Strike was going to be removed, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, everyone chill. I mean, they won't just completely fuck us over like that. I mean, they haven't, they wouldn't remove a Warrior's Mortal Strike. They wouldn't go and remove a fucking Fire Mage's, Frost Mage's Ice Lance. They wouldn't go and do that. I mean, they're not going to do that to Unholy either. They weren't going to do that. Well, holy shit, they did. Okay, I've been playing Unholy for about half a season now, or however long the season's going to last, and that's what they actually fucking did, and I cannot fucking believe it. It is absolutely atrocious. It is like the designers of this game are fucking brain-dead monkeys. And they just, no, it's not, it's also like, you kind of get the idea that they are just selfish dickheads who do not give a shit about PvP or any fucking PvP class in the game, which we've been playing since like Wrath of the Lich King. I mean, it's like they just don't care about the players. It makes absolutely no sense. Now, there was a point I was going on. What was the point I was going on? Yeah, so when I saw all the notes for WoD, I was thinking, okay, they're going to make up for the damage that we're going to make up for the pressure that we sacrificed by removing Necrotic Strike. I'm like, okay, fine, I think it's fine. I looked at what was it called, Necrotic Plague. Oh, right, okay, that looks really nice. Dots ticking every 2 seconds. That looks like our sustained damage is going to increase to be even more fucking damaging than the Warlocks. And if our sustained damage is going to be that hefty, then it's going to be fucking amazing. We don't even need a burst. The sustained damage is going to be that nice. I mean, we don't even need to be on our target to do damage. And I thought that was how DK was going to function. Holy shit, no. It didn't work. And Necrotic Plague was completely inviable. The dot damage is actually less than the dot damage isn't less than the normal dot damage if you know how to use it properly. But the thing is, when you retain the dot damage of Necrotic Plague properly, you actually sacrifice your DPS because you have to consume your Death Runes with Festering Strike. So basically, it's actually a DPS loss. Overall, it is unfortunately a DPS loss. So they have not made up in any way for this just general lack and removal of pressure in PvP, and it is taking the piss. So what needs to happen is very simple. I am going to do the World of Warcraft designers, or whatever you want to call them. I'm going to do their fucking job for them. Okay, I am going to redesign Unholy. I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to tell you exactly how Unholy has to function. It's very simple. It's very, very simple. Either the sustained damage of Unholy has to increase. Okay, that could be more Necrotic Plague damage. It could be more normal dot damage. It could be anything. Just make the sustained damage of a class needs to increase. This could also be like, for instance, back in the day, Unholy. Whenever you death coiled, it didn't just increase your pet's damage, but it also increased your damage, your personal damage. Increases your shadow damage, which is really nice. It was a really nice feature, and it works. So basically, our sustained damage has to either increase like that, or a burst damage has to come back. Okay, this is the suggestion I have. Obviously, Now we don't have Necrotic Strike, we consume our Death Runes with Scourge Strikes. Okay, so what needs to happen to Scourge Strike? Because at the moment the damage is fucking measly. It's just atrocious. If you think about it, back in the day, when this game was working properly, I think Scourge Strike was doing about 20k damage. Okay, like that was in MOP. Necrotic Strike, it was doing about 70k. Okay, 70k damage. That's nice. That's really nice. Really nice pressure that you can get out. Probably could even get it, you know, a lot. I mean, in a little short space of time, you can get about 500k health absorption on a target. And that was really nice. That really worked. Now, in comparison, I mean, and Scourge Strike fair enough got buffed a while back, which means in MOP it probably would have done about 20 to 30k damage, which compared to 70k is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. Okay, what needs to happen is Scourge Strike needs to be buffed. The damage of Scourge Strike needs to very flatline, just very simply needs to be increased. Okay, the problem is that would make it too overpowered for PvE if Scourge Strike was simply the damage was increased, which means perhaps the Scourge Strike has to consume 2 runes. Okay, maybe it needs to consume 2 runes and do more damage in a shorter space of time, so that in a PvP situation we can get a lot of damage out in a short space of time for the brief period of time that we're actually on our target. The other option that I was thinking of is that each time you Scourge Strike, the damage of your next Scourge Strike is actually increased, and it stacks to a maximum of 5 times until your 5th Scourge Strike is doing like proper big damage, like as much damage as an Obliterate crit. And that would be nice, that would function properly. And just to make it not overpowered, when you got to those 5 stacks, it would completely refresh. And it would just go. So it builds up to 5 stacks and then just goes. A bit like that passive effect that mages have, when it just kind of have this passive effect where the damage just increases and then decreases, increases and decreases like that. Just if it could just work like that. What basically needs to happen, I mean, Scourge Strike damage needs to be increased, and Deathcore damage needs to be increased. It needs to, and then obviously our like sustained damage, like like we can spam about 6 Scourge Strikes in a row, which do average damage, but the fact that you can do so many in a row makes it viable for raiding. Either what needs to happen is that the damage needs to be increased, and it doesn't need to be increased, it just needs to be shortened. That's all that needs to happen. The damage needs to stay the same, but shortened, so that it can work in PvP. It's very, 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 very simple. You need to make Scourge Strike do damage and do pressure in PvP, including PvE, in a very simple way. Is to make it do more damage. Make it do the same damage, possibly a bit more if you're going to be generous, in a short space of time. And that is it. We need to be doing more damage in a shorter space of time to compensate for this fact that there is this option in the game to play PvP. The Unholy spec needs to cater for the possibility that a few people who play this game want to play PvP and not just down the boring ass raid bosses over time. It's very simple. I mean, I'm not even like a game designer, and I know that, and I'm sure the entire fucking world would agree with me. And if you don't, then you're probably as brain dead as the people who are fucking designing this game. Got nothing else to say. I think I've gone on far enough, and probably by this point nobody's listening to the video. So this is the Meta Goblin here. Ciao.
I can't seem to stand. Nothing changes inside of me. I'm tired